Over the last 50 years, women in America have been increasingly subjugated to media influences, some more obvious than others, encouraging consumption of material goods and services that promote the unrealistic portrayal of how women should think, feel, and present themselves to the outside world. This unrealistic portrayal using sex, extravagant lifestyles, and images of perfection sets a social standard at a level that only celebrities and debutantes can attain, a standard of beauty, domestic living, and materialism. The mass media of pop culture, music, movies, television, and celebrities inundate the lives of these women's children and their children's children, who grew up with Barbie, teen idols, and other generic images of sexual and physical ideals. The result, a society of women who reflect the trends of the time, whose collective self-esteem was lowered. Insecurities that are programmed by corporate industries result in massive profits for those industries. By examining magazines, music, television, and girls' toys, we can come to the conclusion that women and girls are bombarded with suggestive advertising that undermines their self-esteem, manipulates them into consuming, and as a result leaves them feeling like less of a person.
And then the magazines trick the women. The magazines start picking at your self-esteem. Every page you turn, you start feeling fatter and uglier, and you feel like your clothes aren't good enough. And the magazines have you forgetting how fucking beautiful you are. And that's what happens.
The following is an example of corporation systematic sales structure. Models and celebrities in magazine, television, music, and movies sell you a lifestyle and products that change season to season. You spend money on the goods and services for the items that you desperately need. Various industries profit at the expense of your self-esteem, and they make money. Corporations pay advertisers to hire celebrities to wear their products and sell their goods. These corporations are creating a social standard, and most people want to be accepted and therefore not diverge from the social norm by consuming what they are told to consume. As men returned home from World War II, their infatuation with the pinup girl came back with them. Spurred by Victor Vargas, his artwork was featured in Esquire magazine, and his sexually explicit style was reproduced in various forms. Marilyn Monroe was one of his models. Before she was Marilyn, she was a girl from Los Angeles named Norma Jean Mortensen, who was raised in a foster home. Her modeling career as a Varga girl, coupled with an acting career, turned her into a pop icon. Her measurements of 37, 23, 36 was the ideal for many young women. The cosmetic, hair, and skincare and clothing industries of the day would use models to sell their products and lifestyles to the female consumers. Beginning in the 50s, corporations began manipulating using the newly popularized television as a direct advertising link into the home and to women. Television shows like I Love Lucy, Leave It to Beaver, and Ozzie and Harriet painted a picture of an ideal lifestyle during the 50s and into the 60s. Mass production was in full force, and there was pressure on female consumers of the day to have the latest fashion, gadget, and home items. Sales of cosmetics and seasonal apparel soared, and women consumed, not only for themselves, but for their husband, kids, and homes as well, signaling to corporate America who actually does the shopping in our country. Beginning with Marilyn to today's female mass-produced pop icons, these women are used by corporations to sell their goods to the public. These women set the sexual idea for both men and women. The models in the magazines, the actresses on the big screen, the toys young girls play with, all create a false sense of self, a sense of self that is highly idealized and out of reach for most people.
Marilyn was unattainable, but when Twiggy came around, you could starve yourself and paint on eyelashes.
In the 60s, Twiggy set a new standard in the modeling world, a standard that in many ways is still upheld today. Slenderness became the most important indicator of physical attractiveness. She weighed in at 95 pounds and had a figure of a prepubescent boy. Despite an American public with increasing body weights, Playboy magazine increased the promotion of slimness between 1959 and 1978. Miss America contestants were also found to be thinner over time, and winners of the pageant after 1970 consistently weighed less than any other contestants. The massive profits of the dieting industry and legal and illegal drugs are all consequences of this impossible ideal. The psychological effect of anorexia and bulimia affect primarily people in their teens and 20s, but studies report both disorders in children as young as 6 and individuals as old as 76. As the baby boomers in the U.S. grow older, there seems to be an increase in the incidence of middle-aged women with anorexia and bulimia, possibly because this group has consistently considered image to be of major importance. Statistical data regarding anorexia and bulimia is few and far between due to the intimacy of the condition. It is a private issue that isn't often publicly discussed, and therefore the reported cases of anorexia and bulimia are treated in extreme cases. Research suggests that about 1% of the female adolescents have anorexia. That means that about 1 out of every 100 young women between 10 and 20 are starving themselves, sometimes to death. In American society, the scale also goes in the other direction. The mixed messages all consumers receive, according to the Archives of Pediatric and Adolescent Medicine, include the popularity of fast food, ready available snacks with high sugar and fat content, and little physical activity, including the use of automobiles, increased time spent in front of the TV sets and computers. Studies suggest that about 60% of adult Americans, both male and female, are overweight. Carl's Jr. recently featured 110-pound Paris Hilton chowing down on their new, extremely big burger, creating a false ideology of being hyper-thin meanwhile consuming fast food. Thus, about 31% of American teenage girls are somewhat overweight. An additional 15% of American teen girls are obese. The majority of Americans are overweight, but the icons in our media are underweight. At the start of the 80s, new technology paved the way to pay your way to beauty. The late 70s and early 80s are the beginning of the era of plastic surgery, when someone could pay to augment parts of their body. A science originally created for burn victims was now being glorified by celebrities. The general public followed suit in massive numbers. In 1990, the Plastic Surgery Association asked men and women what they would change about their appearance. Women are increasingly more critical than men when it comes to their self-perception. In the last 10 years alone, the rates of women undergoing breast implant surgery has also climbed. More alarmingly, the rates of girls under the age of 18 undergoing procedures such as nose jobs, breast implants, and chemical peels are in most cases unnecessary. Profits and demand have steadily climbed, and the availability of these procedures make them as common as going shoe shopping. The plastic surgery industry seems to be growing exponentially, without an end in sight. Aside from plastic surgery, the 80s also ushered in new technology. Cable television was a way for the consumer to not only pay for watching television, but to break the consumer down into different demographics. For example, MTV has advertisers for youth culture, and Lifetime is marketing to women. Cable and satellite offer over 300 different viewing options. Since the 80s, young men and women have been plugged in and continue to consume what is being glorified and advertised. Society has often offered a dual image of women. There is the Madonna and the Madonna, the Vestal Virgin and the empowered vixen. MTV has glamorized lavish lifestyles, music and media celebrities to the viewing demographics of 12 to 25-year-olds for the last 24 years. MTV has festered into the most powerful imaging device to the 80s generation and to all that have followed. In the 90s, once again technology advanced and the internet gave consumers a new medium from which to consume. Volumes of pornography are readily available to any internet user. The media paraded the likes of Pamela Anderson and Jenny McCarthy, who continued the idea of very slim build and very large breasts. If surgery wasn't an option, the newly introduced Wonder Bra gave you one. The more unattainable idea was the runway model cocaine chic look. Aside from the impossibly thin, frail, and sickly ideal, the Calvin Klein ad campaigns featured younger and younger models in provocative poses. It was an era where it was okay for a woman to call herself a bitch, and as a culture we were talking about sex. From music to television to the White House, sex was permeating our world. Unfortunately, things have gotten worse before they've gotten any better. The curiosity of the 90s youth-obsessed culture led to the hyper-marketing of pop icons like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera. As icons, they sent mixed messages. However, Be Sexy was heard loud and clear. Their super sexy 15 minutes of fame caused more damage in our culture than most people realize. Rolling Stone, an adult magazine that features music, had the Olsen twins on the cover with the copy, "America's Favorite Fantasy," inferring that grown men fantasized about the twins. An adult magazine deeming that fantasy about minors is inappropriate. As soon as Britney was knocked up, still sending a message, and was ushered off, America was focused on a new, young, up-and-coming crowd. Paris Hilton, Nicole Richie, Hilary Duff, Mary-Kate, and Ashley Olsen are all part of the new Hollywood brats. This group of young women have wasted away physically and set the example for sexy. Sexy? Sexy? Why do celebrities feel the need to get thinner and thinner? Do they read magazines too? Where is the seed where all that insecurity comes from? Perhaps if we look to childhood toys, we can find the answer. Barbie has been the leading doll in America for numerous generations. Barbie changed with the time. When it was politically correct to have black friends in 1968, Mattel introduced Christie. When women were getting to work in the 70s, Barbie was an Olympic skier, a gymnast, a skater. She also moonlights as a stewardess, and let's not forget Astronaut Barbie. In the 80s, Barbie reflected the materialism of the time, sporting clothes designed by Christian Dior, as well as Barbie's line of connoisseur fashions inspired by Madonna, including skin-tight black pants. In 1989, Mattel introduced Pepsi Spirit Barbie. This is more than typical of the corporate intermingling of the materialistic and shameless 80s. In 1994, Teen Talk Barbie utters the phrase, "Math is hard." The doll becomes a flashpoint in the national discussion on girls and education. In 2000, she ran for president, but it was an election of controversy. But the victor of her battle was the newly introduced, ultra-sexy and suggestive Bratz dolls. In 2002, they outsold Barbie for girls 7 years and older. Barbie even tried marketing a counter-product line called My Scene to no avail, with similarly skimpy and trendy clothing with large eyes and lips. Who is buying the toys and for whom? In the case presented, I've argued that the trends in the fashion and advertising industries have set impossible standards that have resulted in high rates of anorexia and bulimia. Corporations use celebrities to sell goods to the general public. The images that are set are once again just always out of reach, and that sex is becoming a more and more dominant theme within many areas of American pop culture, and that, most recently, even the age of consent is getting blurred. But with all that said, why are prepubescent girls playing with dolls that are so blatantly toying with the image of underage girls and sex? Who is supporting this ad campaign and toys that teach 7-year-old girls to paint themselves up like whores, inject Botox into their lips, and buy expensive, suggestive clothing? The answer? Just about everyone. Parents, friends, and relatives are purchasing these dolls for the up-and-coming youth and outselling Barbie in the process. It's a conscious decision that people are making to buy these sex toys for children. They are passing that judgment, or lack thereof, onto the younger generations. It is a seed that, if planted deep enough into a girl's psyche, and then reinforced, and reinforced, will grow to an amazing garden of insecurities that are then exploited by an irresponsible, corporate profiteering machine that has no bounds when it comes to making themselves richer at the expense of a woman's psyche. Here in America, we have the freedom of choice. Unfortunately, the billboards and product placement are out of our control, but we can choose how and where we spend our money. We can choose to consume the magazines of various demographics that bombard us with suggestive advertising that manipulate us into consuming, because we really do need to improve our homes, clothes, body, hair, face, lifestyles, relationships, and our diets. Insecurities that are programmed by those magazines are then money in the bank for the advertisers of those mediums. Our individual self-esteem needed any longer to be abused by corporate America. I do hope that for the women watching, eyes were maybe opened up a little wider, and well, we're beautiful, every size, shape, color, culture, and type of woman. Once we collectively realize that, we will no longer be a slave to the clothing, hair, cosmetic, and plastic surgery industries. We will spread awareness amongst ourselves, and we will raise daughters who are more aware and will hopefully make better decisions.